It's always a privilege and a joy to return to Tapestry. You know, I've said it, and it's not hot air. This is one of the finest stints in my 48th year of ministry. I'm not settled anymore. I'm in retirement, but our 2 years together, I want to reiterate, were very nourishing for me, and have spawned a lot of things that I'm going to talk about today. Thank you, Susan, for being a part of the service as always, and being a part of welcoming me here. And Kent Doss, it's great that Kent is here this morning so I can say out loud things that are going to burn his ears. You know, that usually isn't the case. The in-resident clergy are usually off fishing, you know, during the time that guests roll into town. But in any case, I know things are going well here. You've said it, they've said it, it's out there. And that's very satisfying to me, deeply, deeply gratifying. You can't take anything for granted. You can't coast. You got to keep grinding, and you got to keep creating the kind of congregation of which you can all be proud. And then when any one of us goes underground, you can say, yeah, I was a part of that. It's interesting, Connie sent out, and by the way, Connie playing the piano, I mean, that's bold. It really is. I mean, you know, when I was here, you wrote a book, and now you're playing the piano, and there's a room where you're going to take up tap dancing? Is that right? There are limits. There are limits. So anyway, I got to think, she sent out something about welcome Tom, and his books will be available for purchase. Everything's free today. And I'm not, that's not noble. I'm not a sacrificial lamb. My newer books, Unwrapping the Inner Gifts of Christmas and Wake Up, I don't have enough copies of those currently to bring them here, but I have samples. But Theology Ablaze and Friendship Chronicles, written 20 years ago, friendship between a gay and a straight man. There's still nothing out on that. And my first book I ever wrote, Passing Along the Good Life to Your Children. So I want to share those. And if you already have them, take one for a neighbor, for someone in your family, newcomers, whatever. I want to go home lighter today, and I seriously mean that. So they're here for you. Hope is believing in spite of the evidence and watching the evidence change. No, helping the evidence change. Hope is a dynamic of history. It's the energy of transformation. Every morning you don't want to leave home without hope. Whatever your mood might be, whatever the schedule that lies ahead in your life might be, no matter the morale of the universe, go forth with hope. I'm not suggesting that the world's problems are solved, far from it. But good and hopeful news too frequently slips beneath our radar screens. And it's the job of those of us who belong to a genuinely life-affirming, this-worldly, liberating religion to stand tall and shout forth items of good news, to proclaim hope, to nurture hope, to be hope. Now, hope is in a fierce battle with despair. There's the fact that since 1990, more than 100 nations have cast aside military dictatorships or one-party rule and have chosen elected governments. Yet on the other side of the ledger, over 1 billion folks still live under regimes that deny fundamental freedoms, especially religious freedom. So hope is in a fierce battle with despair. That's why it needs us. Although the world's population has doubled between 1960 and 2000, the rate of growth is now declining. Families on every continent are having fewer children, and in the past 30 years, the global average fertility rate has fallen from 6 children per woman to 2.8 children per woman. On the other hand, half of the world lives on less than $2 a day. Hope is in a brutal battle with despair. Literacy in the developing world has jumped from 47% in 1970 to 70% today, meaning that many more people have tools to improve their standard of living, yet the fact is that still almost 1 billion people entered the 21st century illiterate. Hope is in a raging battle with despair. And so it comes down to every day, what team are you going to join? And you got to remake that commitment day after day after day. You know, one of the things that I admire most about Thich Nhat Hanh, most all of his retreats, he intentionally invites children and youth to attend. Not just geezers and elders and not just consummate meditators. He makes sure that the children and the youth of the world are present. And there was one young man, about 16, brash, and he said, "Okay, sir, what's the toughest thing you face, Thich Nhat Hanh, every day of your life?" And quickly he replied, "Overcoming despair with hope." Overcoming despair with hope. And so even the giants of mindfulness and mercy are grappling mightily daily with despair. And so I implore each one of us, as we rise every morn, to answer the question, are you saying yes? Are you saying yes to love more deeply those near and dear to you? Are you saying yes to greater kindness and justice where you work and play and worship? Are you saying yes to a one-world family, to a planet at peace, to the well-being of all life everywhere? Is your next act increasing yes in the world, or merely adding to the slew of no's or maybes or yes buts? Try saying yeses aloud every day, yeses from the heart, and watch some of those yeses take wings and become more real than you could ever imagine. Yes, I can. Yes, we can. You and I, as Unitarian Universalists, have consciously thrown our lot with an unrelentingly hopeful faith. And by hope, I'm not referring to optimism. The optimist tends to be fanciful and dreamy-eyed, leaving the world's problems up to George or God, Gertrude or Goddess to solve while remaining a bouncy, mindless cheerleader on the sidelines. I'm not talking about that. The optimist resembles a person who gazes at the stars, as they say, but is perennially at the mercy of the puddles in the road. The hoper, instead, is convinced that something will happen, maybe, but is willing to work his or her rear off to make sure that it might just come to be this afternoon. The optimist lays back, the hoper moves forward. The hoper is an activated human being, one who arouses in self and others a passion for the possible. Hopers stay on purpose even when not immediately successful. The hoper differs from the pessimist as well. Realism would often demand pessimism, but the hopeful person talks not in terms of crisis, a concept that usually overwhelms and immobilizes us, but in terms of issues and challenges and jobs with our names on some of them. You see, everything grows manageable when reduced to doable tasks. Hope arouses passion for the possible. Hopers know that the best antidepressant available on the market, no matter what else we ingest, the best antidepressant available involves movement of mouth, movement of body, movement of conscience, movement of heart, moving outside our self-pity to connect with the larger world in specific, loving deeds. Cynicism's all around us. In fact, in the past few years, a new sort of progressive cynicism, if you will, has arisen. Progressive cynics harbor the conviction that Western culture and American society are hopelessly oppressive. I would agree. Our culture is drenched in racism, sexism, homophobia, and a whole array of interlocking oppressions. I know, for as a white heterosexual male, I'm the Pharaoh in most freedom fighters' exoduses, simply because of my given identity. But while reality is profoundly oppressive, it is not terminally so. Cynicism is spiritual treason. We keep on keeping on as Unitarian Universalists because we're incurable hopers. Okay, Reverend Tom, how you being hope in refinement? And I want to share some stories of how I'm trying to be out there. Comparisons are odious. You're going to be hope in your own way. You're going to clean your neighborhood up. You're going to tutor at school. Whatever it might be. I'm just here to maybe arouse and prod and nudge from some of my own refinement stories. You know, I was terribly moved growing up by one of the really moral politicians we had in our country that never got the credit that he deserved, and that's Hubert Humphrey. And as he was near death, he was asked to address Congress. And this is what he said: the true moral test of a country is what we do with those at the dawn of life, children, those enduring the shadows of life, the oppressed, and those entering twilight of life, our seniors. And so, a few stories from my volunteering with children and oppressed and elders and crones. My efforts are flawed, but I got to tell about them because that motivates me to show up tomorrow night, to keep me going and not just climbing into the camper. I'm still grinding because, as Rilke said, love means holding to the difficult. Love means holding to the difficult, staying there, assuming the vow of stability and endurance, fidelity, if you will. Shirley Chisholm, another one of the giants that I admired growing up in the late 50s, wasn't it, when she became the first African-American woman to be in Congress, state of New York. She was serving. And that feistiness and gutsiness and boldness of this empowering woman who said, service is the rent we pay for the privilege of being on earth. Service is the rent we pay for the privilege of being on earth. Now, in my serving, there are some guidelines that work for me, and I offer them. The first one is think globally but act locally. Serve your own neighborhood. I walk 4 blocks to the youth shelter. I walk when I don't have to carry stuff in my car, the 3 miles to the homeless center. There's a nursing home where I sing that's a few blocks away. I remember Tip O'Neill used to say, you got to carry your own precinct. You know, we're so often, and nothing wrong with giving the cash out there and beyond, or even getting in the car, I guess, and going 40 minutes to help. But I'm promoting today, and one of the guidelines that works for me is to work your own neighborhood. Find ways to work your own neighborhood. Carolyn and I, it's on Wednesday or Thursday, get our sack and put on our gloves and pick up the trash in our neighborhood. And it's interesting how people see us and they kind of don't know what to say. And I say, okay, dump that Starbucks, I'll take it. I'll take it. No, it's nothing noble. It's just, I want to make where I live more presentable to the homeless youth that are coming to the storefront. Second one that works for me is to remember that discomfort is a spiritual discipline. So I invite you to go to places that scare you a little bit. If you've been a school teacher all your life, put tutoring on the shelf maybe, and try something else that's a little bit bolder, wilder, fiercer. Because not all you do will match up with the world. Not everybody's going to like you. I've been turned down 2 or 3 times by schools that one of which said we really only have parents volunteer. And I don't want to quarrel with that. There are reasons. And I've taken the life scan, the program to figure out fingerprinting 4 times now. Can't they get it all squared away in Sacramento that once you go through pretty clean, you're okay? But extra cash goes to that program. I understand. People die on my watch. And if the family members are saddened by that, think of how the caregivers feel. And think, I feel too. I feel too. Discomfort is a spiritual discipline. Jeffrey Canada, who spent so much time in Harlem helping boys, particularly boys of color, become men, empowered and just and merciful men in the world today. And he said, working with youth isn't rocket science. It's way harder than that. We don't save anybody in what I'm doing. I don't solve anybody's problems very often. But I serve. And service is the rent we pay for being here on earth. A third guideline for me is to marry joy and duty. And I've probably shared this before with you, and Mother Teresa was right on target, and she was asked, why do you spend time with the ennui, the little ones, those on the margins of existence, the disenfranchised? Why are you out there? It's messy, it's filthy. And she said, well, it's my duty. No, that's not it. It's my joy. That's not quite it either. It's when my joy and my duty are married. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay. 3 years ago, I volunteered to be in a program called Kids at Heart. They're Hispanic children, ages 4 or 5 through 12, whose reading and math skills are limited. My Spanish is essentially non-existent, but it's not essential in this program. And I'm not about to spend my time at 73 to grind and learning another language. Although I'll tell you later, I learned a little bit in singing in the nursing home. But I got Brian Pliego Sanchez was my buddy. And Brian has a hearing loss. He was 11 when we came into one another's lives. Brian has a hearing loss. He was 3 grades behind. He's reading at about a 3rd grade level, and he had his head on his chest. And 3 years later, I would say, his head's moving off his chest. And one of the things that Brian and I got him a $5 pocket dictionary from a discount store, and I said, Brian, I want you to look up every letter of your name for a positive word that speaks to you. And it took us the bulk of the year, actually. Brian Pliego Sanchez. And I don't want you to leave out Sanchez. That's your mother's name, and your mother's integral to your life, right? Yeah. I know you're Brian Pliego on the records here in the school, but you're Brian Pliego Sanchez to me. And it took him about the whole year. He was coming up with words that were incredible, and he still got it. Another thing I did with Brian, I asked him to name the most important people in his life. And Lorenzo and Selena were there, his parents. His brother and sister were on the list. His dogs Fluffy and Billy were on the list. And I said, somebody's missing. Brian? And he said, well, oh, yeah, you, Mr. Tom. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm honored to be on your list. But that wasn't what I was asking for. And we danced back and forth for about 30 minutes, and I said, you're missing. Because you're the most important person in your life. He's going off to high school next year. Downtown San Diego, a new library, and then the 4th and 5th floor, they have a school there. 90% kids of color and lower economic status. Brian qualifies, he's in. He's scared. His mother says there's drugs down there, and I said, Selena, there are drugs every place. And I said, I want you to know something. My wife and I were not moving, as far as we know, and I will be in Brian's life as long as he will have me. And now when I ask him, Brian, what's more important than the school you're going to be going to? He points at his chest. The homeless shelter for youth nearby, about 3 blocks away. Carol and I have walked that for 34 years we've lived in San Diego. Same house. We've walked by that place, which in the last 15 years has become a homeless shelter for youth. And of course, they aren't announcing it. Shouldn't, of course. But isn't it beautiful that I get to walk with my magic paraphernalia and my collage materials and my little attaché case and my being over there. And when I was volunteering at the homeless center, a man came up to me and I said, Jorge, you're really, you look spry. You're doing well, aren't you? And he said, yeah, I'm filled with hope. He says, is that what keeps you going? Hope. Healthy options practiced every day. Healthy options practiced every day. So I took his savvy and I share it with the kids. Healthy options practiced every day, and I've also modified it to an hour of play and empowerment as we work on collages and sharing. And I don't want to over-dramatize it, and I don't want to over-romanticize it. I'm no longer there at the youth center. It was clear that a lot of the young people, when they came home from the streets or from work, 13 to 17-year-olds, or from work, or from grinding, looking for something, they came and they were fatigued and they wanted naps. They didn't want to spend time with a geezer. I got it. It's okay. You learned it. It's not personal. It's a spiritual discipline. And although it was tough, when they go out for a smoke during the time, and when they're texting during the time, and when I'd really rather do a video game, Mr. Tom, and I understand. But there have been some breakthroughs, and I want to tell you, the first time I was there, I talked about hope, and this gentleman that told me about HOPE, healthy options practice every day, and this guy stood up, a 16-year-old, and he said, yeah, that's a lot better than dope. Dead or prison eventually. And he said, okay, Mr. Tom, I'll be here. I don't know if I'll be here next week, but I'm here today. And how are you going to move me from a hopeless doper to a dopeless hoper? How are you going to move me? I don't even know what happened after that. Another moment, Alfonso was working with bringing rope tricks, and we were working on a particular trick and everything, and learning how to do it, and he was really struggling, and I said, Alfonso, we can move on to something else. It's okay, we can move on to something else. And he said, are you quitting on me? Are you quitting on me, Mr. Tom? Because if I can do this magic trick with the rope, there's no telling what I can do out there on the streets. Then there's Nika, a tattoo and an earring in every every spot on her body. And it just, that much was that much for me, okay? Our daughter has a tattoo, there's family members, and she was gruff. And she was alone that day. No one else was showing up or whatever. And we had to meet in the kitchen because there wasn't any room in the rest of the house, the shelter. And all of a sudden, we were working on a collage, and I bring magazines. They're turned over so you don't see whether it's The Economist or People or Sports Illustrated or whatever it might be. And then they just pick out magazines at random and then are to craft something, a collage that resembles who you want to be, Nika, who you want to be in your life. And as she was making this collage, she was spouting some of the deepest wisdom I had heard in years. You know, I didn't say anything. I just listened. And then I left, and she was there the next week. She said, I want to still work on that collage. And then I left, and I came back the next week. And they told me that she'd moved on, but she had made a 5-foot by 7-foot collage that's hanging on the wall on the storefront as a message of hope. You can do it. You can be it. Grind. God, I wish I could see these young people again. But they're on with their lives, okay? It's not about me. It's not about us. They're serving. In fact, the phrase they use at the youth center is a brilliant one. I've struggled with, am I buddy to Brian? Am I a companion? Am I a big brother? Am I a father surrogate? None of that really comes close to the fact of being a service partner. That's what they use there at the youth center. Because we're both serving somebody, one another. In my serving, I'm bringing something home. And in their serving me, I'm giving something back. We're service partners in paying our rent for being here. I got a couple more stories. Homeless adults. I founded the Homeless Center in San Diego back in 1986, and I have vowed that I won't serve in any boards and I won't raise any money, but I'll show up with my name tag. That's how I want to be, okay? Oscar Wilde used to say the reason he refused to become a socialist is he refused to attend night meetings. and I've given up night meetings. But I'm on duty during the day. And, you know, there's a lot of dynamics, and bear with me if I share a little bit. You know, you come to the rest stop, you come to the stop off the freeway, and sisters and brothers are there, hoping for a handout of some sort. Hand up, handout, I'm not sure. And sometimes I'm not up to it, and I just move on. But now more and more, along with my dollar, if I have any change, I give a card that says where the rescue mission is. And that tonight you can go there. There's a bed for you tonight. And it's about, I'll tell you exactly where it is, and the light's changing, you got to move quickly. Or here's a coupon for Vons. Or Mickey D's, whatever. This is a friend of mine says, oh my goodness, I just ran into God again. Everybody just wants some justice, wants some fairness, wants what belongs to them delivered to them, be it freedom or dignity or food or shelter. Louis Artis, one of our service partners at the Homeless Center. Louis is in his 60s, and he's struggling right now. He had serious bout with prostate cancer, and he's not homeless, but he's damn close. And he's on the edges. But he still comes, even as he's rebounding from the surgery, he comes and he doesn't just go back to the clothing room or ask for some food that day or a bus token or is male, he sits in the room and counsels all the sisters and brothers who come in off the streets. And he says, you're better than that. You need help with this issue. You've been talking to me about it the last half hour.